go.
So give yourselves a woo. Woo! Oh, y'all are good. But you gotta get the hands going too. So okay, will you do it again? Okay, 1, 2, 3. Woo!
All right. Good morning, everybody. Hi, Crystal. Hi, Lisa.
Hi. How are you this morning?
Doing great. So, Crystal, we are so excited to have you on with us. And you're out here in California, right? Well, actually, Lisa and I are in Vegas, but you're in California, right?
I'm in California. Yes, I am. And a little early start for me. I work late at night, so morning time is not my forte. But good morning, everyone. Glad to be here.
Yes. Yeah, you know,
we're so glad you got up with us.
It is early. It is early. I wonder sometimes, like, why did I do this to myself 6 years ago? But actually, I know why, because at that time, most of the people that I was connected with were in Kansas City. And so I did it at 7:30, so it would be convenient for them.
I see. I was like, wait a minute, is she on the West Coast? Why is she up here this early morning hour stuff?
Well, that's why. So if any of our listeners...
Thank you, Crystal. I keep trying to tell
them. For sure. Well, hey, before we get started into our little chat, I'll just let everybody know. So May is Mother's Day. That's going to be like 2 weeks, right? We had a Sunday in the middle, so in 2 weeks it's Mother's Day. And I thought, well, we'll just focus on moms the whole month. So this morning we will be kicking that off with mom lessons. And Crystal and I had a one-on-one, I don't know, a few months ago, and we were chatting, and I don't know, we just like clicked right off the bat. It was so cool. And I thought, well, hey, you want to come speak in May and be on the show with me? And so I'm so thrilled that you said yes. And then, so each week is going to just highlight a different little thing about moms. And right now, at the top of my head, I can't remember the other guests that will be coming. But as y'all listen and pay attention, we will have a guest just about every week. We might miss one or two in the month of May, because it's just fun sometimes to have a special topic and invite people to come in and join us. So that way, Lisa and I have somebody else to talk to, right, Lisa? Because it's usually the two of us.
Yeah.
So. Want to remind y'all that we do still have Wow the World. Remember, make sure that's on your calendar. Be sure to look at getting your ticket either live in person or online, August 4th, 5th, and 6th. I know you guys are going to be really happy when we have this fabulous event, and it's so amazing. And then you're going to not have to hear me talk about it. I've been talking about it for months now. So yes, I do know how to talk about other things, but that just is our specialty thing. And it's been so many years. Our last one was in 2017 here in Las Vegas. Then we had a cruise in the middle, so that was sort of our special thing. And then, of course, pandemic hit. And so we're excited about getting people out in person, get that energy in the room and all of those things. And if you want 21 reasons why, go to the Fun Fearless page or to my page, because I recorded a little 21 days of why you need to get your tickets. So go and check those out. So, all righty. And hey, good morning, Kathy. Always great to have you with us. You love special topics. I do. I love that too. Thank you. Thank you. So, Lisa, you want to do a quick hello, and then we'll jump right into our topic and have Crystal tell us about herself.
Well, hello, and I like special topics too. I especially like this one because moms are such a, they're the cream filling in the world, in my opinion. They make everything so wonderful and delightful. So that's my 2 cents for the morning.
So, Crystal, just briefly tell us a little bit about yourself. Whatever you kind of let us know. We can see there you're a business coach, but tell us a little bit more about you.
Yes, I'm a business coach, but I've been in business for over 30 years. But what I do in business is I help small businesses, as adults and kids, achieve their dreams. If they have an aspiration to be an entrepreneur, I help them achieve that. And so, but the greatest part of that is the kids that I actually help achieve that. So this weekend, it's been very busy for me. Leading into the summertime, I spend all my efforts working with children. So this weekend, I had 4 kids reach competing throughout the month of April for competitions. It was a youth entrepreneur challenge. And so we had 3 kids that competed citywide in Los Angeles, and they actually took first, second, and third place.
Ah,
And so I am super jazzed right now. And so now I'm getting ready to go into my summer season, and I'm going to be teaching 50 kids through the month of June and July, on how to be entrepreneurs, tapping into their dreams and aspirations and molding them into future entrepreneurs. So I'm not a mom per se, but I've probably raised and inspired close to 1,500 kids over my business career. And so
wow.
that's my attributions to this world, I guess. That's why God put me on this planet.
Oh, that is great. That is great. Well, because I think kids have they still have such great imaginations, and some of the things that, that they come up with, we may as adults, and the older we get, maybe less likely to pay attention. Hopefully not, but I think that does happen. But to be able to take them and actually work with them and show them how that happens. And I'm sure a lot of what it is about mental attitude, right?
Well, that's really what entrepreneurship is a mental mindset, right? But is what is amazing with the kids is their creativity. So sometimes as adults, we tend to stifle that part of us because we're doing adult stuff, right? We're worried about bills. So we don't let our creativity run away with us. But kids, you just kind of tap in, drop a few seeds here and there, and just like you watch it grow. It's like a garden. I'm a gardener as well. So for
Oh,
me, I kind of equate it to that. I drop my little seeds, and and nurture it a little bit, and then they just let it flourish. So to watch them get up and compete, and then I hear my little nuggets of words of wisdom, and where I planted it here and there, and hear it actually come out of their mouths, is pretty awesome to me. So I love working with kids.
oh, that is so great. It's like, oh my gosh. And I don't know that there's a lot of people who really focus like that. In fact, you're kind of the first one I've heard. Individually, I think women do. We always do try to nurture our kids, but other kids as well, if if we have that opportunity. So I think that's great that actually is your passion and what you do on a regular basis.
Yeah, I in the early part of my career, I guess I actually incorporated that as part of my give back in my business practice. So
Mhm.
in every aspect, initially it was sports. I was a Girl Scout leader when I was a very young person, so I incorporated it in my early life. I was skiing and doing that kind of stuff. So I had kids, a youth program that so I could ski. I taught them how to ski. And then from skiing, I went to tennis. And so now I'm involved with that. But then when I got into my business, where I was like, wait a minute, I can't leave the kids out. So then I brought them in, and I would, and they're always part of it. So they're always part of my world somewhere in what I do.
Gosh. So you're kind of a surrogate mom. I mean, you are bringing mom women's wisdom and lessons to those kids that you're working with.
Well, I think parenthood is really, really tough. And I think you do have to have a village. I think parents can't do it all by themselves. And one of the things that I noticed, especially when I was taking kids skiing, um, because I was closer to the kids' age, they didn't have a problem confiding in me, and they didn't have a problem censoring themselves around me. So parents, whereas with parents, sometimes kids tend to, don't want to, tell their parents everything. So, but they would feel close enough to me, more like a bigger sister. And because I wasn't really a mom, they felt really close enough that they could confide in me. So parents always felt happy that their kids they had someone, a mentor that they could share with. And so I would get Mother's Day's cards from the mom saying, "Oh my God, thank God," especially when they got to those preteen ages, that you were there during that time, because you really helped out a lot for me to get them from 12 and up to 17, 18 years old. So I've always been like on the sideline. So yeah, I guess a surrogate mom.
Or whatever we want to call it, for sure.
Exactly. So it's hard to be a parent, to take care of the household, to make sure that you're taking care of the needs, being the strict mom, because there's some dangers out there in the world when your children leave out the door, right?
Right.
Making sure that you're giving them all the best, making sure that they're safe, but at the same time making sure that their well-being and they're happy, and that you're meeting their needs. And so sometimes you need either that mentor, that auntie, that best friend, that godmother, that somebody that's actually picking up the slack where you can't pick up. So that's, I guess that was my role. God decided that was what I was going to be, as opposed to being a mom. I'm the pickup mom.
Yeah, well, and you're right. I think it is hard, and I know particularly single moms, because I
Mhm.
know a number of single moms, and it is hard. So when they have someone else that can help nurture their kid, that they trust, because that's an important thing too. Having that other person that works with them and does the activities, but somebody they can really trust, that's guiding them in the way that they want them to be guided. I guess is how to say that.
Yeah, yeah. So
And I know,
It's
Lisa,
the
you
bonus
have a lot
mom.
of
the
experience.
bonus mom. There you go, Lisa. I like that. The bonus mom. I used to tell my sister I would come pick the boys up, my nephews, and I'd say, "Okay, go. You guys go. Be you. I'll take the boys. I'll have them for the whole weekend. You guys go. Just be you." And the kids and I would have a good time. I have a niece as well. And I would pick her up, and we just hang out and do. So I was the bonus mom.
Yeah.
So Lisa, I know
So
you've been in situations. I mean, I know you sort of adopted kids into your family, and you're well
yeah,
acquainted with some of that she's talking about.
yeah, we have the children and the adoptee children. God dropped a lot of children on my doorstep from time to time, and and that was a privilege. That was a real privilege to be able to have other children that had needs and didn't quite have the family situation at home that they should have. So it was a real blessing and a treat to do that. It's nice to watch them grow up and see how well they're doing and everything now. So
Mhm, mhm. So, in the topic of this morning, I love it. Actually, we may not even get that much through the topic, because I love where we're going on this. This is very organic, Crystal. You're saying we kind of go with the flow here. But tell us a little bit about your growing up. Do you have some particular lessons that you learned from your mom? I think sometimes, not everybody had, and I don't know, because you're going to tell us in a second. I don't know about your background, but I know that there's lessons that we may have learned, that the lesson was not to do certain things. Sometimes there's lessons of, here, do this, and you watch them and it's good. But sometimes there's lessons, okay, this is not a good benefit, so you learn the things not to do. So I think it can go either way. And so some of our listeners, may not had, that devoted mom situation. But, all we can kind of do is ours. I know, Lisa certainly did have a beloved and loved mom who did so much for her family. But what about you, Crystal? Tell us a little bit about your growing up.
My mom, my mom and I were best friends. My mom was from the South. She left. She lived. She grew up in Alabama. My grandmother had 13 kids.
Oh,
Yeah, in Alabama. And actually, I lost her husband very early on, so she pretty much raised her 13 kids and sent them all to college. And my mom left and went to New York with her brother. And so I was born in Buffalo, New York, a very cold place. So we had a great life, and then we moved here to California. My mother and I, my mother was one of those individuals, I guess because it came from my grandmother. We're very strong women. My grandmother was a force to be reckoned with. And so, so she raised girls to be forces to be reckoned with. So therefore her girls raised girls to be forces to be reckoned with. So we're pretty, all of us, all the girls, and there's more girls in the family than there are boys. We're all pretty alpha women, but very loving women. My mom was she worked, she was a nurse, but she also loved to sew. She taught us all how to do that. We all had to learn how to cook. We had to learn all to do all that sort of stuff, but we weren't forced to do that. But she taught us to be who we were going to be. You know, whatever that was, she encouraged us to tap into our strengths and our specialties. And just be the best at what you were going to be. And so my mom and I were best of friends. We loved to do sewing together. She taught me when I was, I think, 7 or 8 years old. We had these little chores I remember when I was a child living in New York. At the beginning of summer, everybody would be outside playing. We'd be in the house doing chores. But wait a minute, what about the other kids? She goes, I don't care about the other kids. You're my child, so this is what we're doing. So we had to learn to iron and cook and clean and do all this nonsense. and I remember my little first thing, I had to make a little roller bag for hair rollers and pajama bag and things like that. But by the time I got to high school and we were doing home ec, I already were making full dresses. I had pretty much made a whole wardrobe because that's what my mom had taught me how to do. And I had made most of all of my clothes by the time I was 25, 30 years old. Before I started buying clothes. So those are things that we just took into life. So she just taught us those basics. And, today, young ladies don't even know how to do that, right? They don't cooking, none of that. They never learned those basics. But my mom passed away from cancer in 2006, and I took care of her. Which was probably the hardest thing in this world to do, is to take care of your parent, right? Because especially if they're your best friend, they're your mom, they're your confidant, and then all of a sudden the tables turn, and now you're the confidant. And I remember I was telling my mom she had to do something. She's like, who's the mother here? I said, well, right now I am. And so this is kind of what you got to do. And so she goes, But I loved my mom. She was an amazing person. Toward my teen years, latter part of my teen years, life switched around a little bit. She and my father divorced, so I was going to school to be a doctor. That was what the plan was, and life changes, and so we left Buffalo and. In my 11th year of high school. And so the change for medical school changed because she now was a single parent. So I had to shift to do something different. So business became the goal, and I had to put myself through school. But we got through, and she was an amazing woman. And I am who I am because of her. And so I miss her, but she's always with me. She always guides me, and I think she laid an incredible foundation for who I am.
It sounds like that's a beautiful.
That's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, it's I remember when I was working, some of my girlfriends didn't have quite them and their mothers, they butted heads, and they would go, what are you doing this weekend? I said, oh, my mom, we're going shopping. And my mother was a shopaholic. We're gonna leave Saturday morning, and we probably won't get back home until Saturday night shopping. They're like, you spend all day with your mother? It's like a normal thing for me. They're like, no way.
Oh, that's funny.
Well, maybe some of that sewing together, you hear of like, I don't know if this makes sense, but where my mind went with that is like quilting bees and things like that, when families or friends get together and you do a project together. So, with her raising you to sew together and you cook together, that sets a different kind of tone, don't you think? That, as opposed to you're just over here doing your thing, and that's great. But it kind of, in a interesting way, forces you together, so you have different kinds of conversations if you're sitting there sewing together. Or, I have a friend that came from Nebraska. Her name is Janice. She's awesome. And she talks a lot about how her mom and some of her cousins and stuff would sit around and they would be doing quilting and just have all these. She said, we would just sit and we'd laugh and all of that, that sharing of time together.
Yeah, I think it does.
Yeah.
You're not having, sometimes parents, I guess, think they have to be in the kind of the dictator, and I guess that's the kind of relationship they had, where it's like a dictatorship, right? But my mom and I, she had already set the boundaries of who was the parent, and I knew who was the parent, and I knew not to cross the line, right? So then when I asked after a certain age, then we could be friends, right? So there was never a concern about she being a friend as a child. I knew she wasn't a friend; she was a mother, and she was my mom, and I knew where the boundary was and where to push it and where not to push it. So then as I got a little older, I knew we could then talk about, so I could act, and she left the door open. You can come to talk to me about anything, whatever it is, the door is open. So as I got older, we could have we could have all kinds of conversations. We would go to church together. That was our church time. And I remember I told when my mom passed, I had an adjustment. I told my pastor, I said, I have a difficult time coming to church right now because this is that special time I spent with my mom. And every time I walk into this door and sit down on this pew, this is really hard, man. I can't do this right now. And so he says, I understand. You come back when you feel comfortable enough to do that, because that was our special time as an adult. And so it took a little while. It took a couple of months for me to get back there. But we just had that. But yeah, I think it was. We would laugh and we'd talk, and we'd be up in the middle of the night sewing, and you'd make an error and we have to rip the whole thing out and laugh and all that kind of stuff. But so it was special time. So yeah, it changed it. We were friends, but I knew she was a mother. It's funny because even as I was an adult and she was an adult, there was still a certain decorum, and I knew what to do and what not to do and what to say and what not to say, and what lines to cross and what lines not to cross.
Right. I know every so often my mother
that makes the best friendship.
Yes. Yeah.
That makes the best relationship, because the child needs to feel that safety and the boundaries. And I think that's something that's sort of missing in today's rearing of children. Everybody wants to be just the friend instead of the mother and the friend.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. I think now, Crystal, you're younger than me, but and my parents were from the South, so I had a lot of that same Southern, being a girl in the South kind of thing. And there were very, very direct things about, of how children should behave.
Mm-hmm.
We probably have similarities as far as that's concerned, but in that time, it really was about children. The parents were the parents, and the children were the children, and the children did not rule the house. That's where I'm going on this, because I know in many relationships that I've seen, and Emma Lou would be one to talk, because I'm sure she's seen a lot of this, where the parents sort of turn over the household to the kids. Like everything becomes about the kids. We all love our kids, but there's that difference that I've seen in how the other generation, coming up behind us is raising the kids, where there's not as much of a where that the parents are setting the guidelines of the household. It's more around the whims of the kids, and it's not always successful when it's done that way, you know. So I
Yeah.
think having those boundaries, I think boundaries are a big part of that, and that's part of just when we have our kids, or in any kind, when you're working with them in business or whatever that is, boundaries in all areas, family, between kids and parents, but also even in a workplace. You know, that'd be a good topic for a morning, Lisa. We'll have to put that on one of our topics about setting boundaries.
I think boundaries
Well,
are,
we'll need Emma Lou for that, I think.
Yeah.
I think boundaries are really, really important. I would know when my mom would get angry. I can't even remember, maybe once or twice that my mom even used a curse word. And when she did, boy, did she get your attention. You knew she was really mad, right? Because there was even a certain decorum she had. And you knew you had really crossed the line if she if she went that direction. You were in some trouble, or she used your full entire name, Christian name. You knew. But yeah, today I think parents who are they spend a lot of time trying to please their children, to make sure that they're friends with them as opposed to being the parent. And children crave that. I think children have to know that there's a line that they cannot cross, right? And they're begging for you to tell them what that line is. And if you don't tell them that line, they'll keep pushing, and that could be some of our issues today. That kids are they're looking for you to be the parent, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think so too, because that gives them the security to know what they can do. You know, I think it gives them security. It's like, it seems the opposite, but when they have the boundaries, they can sort of rest in those boundaries of knowing what they can do.
Yeah, that they're safe.
It's actually kind of funny, because when I come in, and grandma's a lot stricter than the parents, you know, this is just the generational differences right now. But I'll come in and Ariel will be like, Rylan, it's grandma. It's like you change channels.
Right, exactly.
Grandma doesn't get to 4. Down to 2.
Right, exactly.
You better be running.
Oh, I love that.
Right, exactly. But that's important. I mean, children have to have boundaries. You know, with our youth program, we tell the moms up front, in our entrepreneur program, it's like we have rules, and they're long. And I said, and the reason that the list is so long is because every time someone creates a new infraction that we had not heard of, we add it to the list. But we provide a stipend for the kids to participate in the program. So if they follow these rules, then they get the full stipend. And if they don't, then we start to deduct. We have demerits that reduce the stipend. But because we're teaching them that your behavior has consequences. And so the parents are like, wow, you guys do that? Well, yeah, that's what kids need. Like, duh, don't you do that at home?
Well, maybe it does help their behavior at home once they're learning that in your program. Hopefully some of that stays with them and how they react at home to situations.
Yeah. I think, you know, we there are certain things from our past, I think, and I'm sure it sounds like we all kind of had a similar background, coming from similar parent rearing styles. But look at us. There's nothing wrong with us the way we were raised, right? Not a thing. We're at our age. We got here at our age. I mean, life has probably had some challenges, but those challenges were there to make us even better people than we are. You know, we can't cushion our children to have no challenges in life, because you don't grow without challenges. Yeah. And I think that's what the modern parent is trying to do, is to keep the child from having any hard knocks. But how do you grow as a better person if you have no hard knocks, if you don't have any challenges in life, because you never learn how to deal with those challenges?
Right. And that's where that term snowflake came from was from the fact that, we've prepared our society to be, to melt at any slight challenge. It's
Right.
like they're very delicate, and that just does not create the survivor in the child. It's actually not really fair to them. So I appreciate our generation of mothers that taught us to be tough.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, because when you stop to think about when we're living in a society and with the opiate epidemic, it's like, why do you need a supplement? Why do you need an outside something to help you to deal with any little whatever, any little blip that comes along? We were raised that the life is hard, right? And you just gotta have some fortitude. And then if you have a spiritual or religious foundation, then you tap into your internal strength, right? You don't need those outside things in order to strengthen you, because that destroys you, right? And so I yeah, so I think that's it. You can't take your children and put them in a bubble and protect them that way.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think, and you hit on something in there too, Crystal, about the fact that there are consequences. I think in our society today, there's a lot of this: do whatever you want and there's no consequences. Well, yeah, there are always consequences. And sometimes, sometimes they're not too bad ones, but sometimes they're very major. And I think when we can teach our kids to make choices, you're showing them, and you're doing this in what your work with the young people, is that when you make a decision, so either do you want the demerit or do you not? Do you want the stipend or do you not? Do you want that success? And it's the little decisions that they learn to make along the way that are going to prepare them for the big things that they're going to have to face, whatever those might be. But our parents were raised in a hard time. I'll speak, for my mom. She was raised during the Depression, and so, everything had such different value. And she did learn to work hard. I mean, I think she was out working by the time she did graduate from high school, but I think she graduated like at maybe 17. So then she was out because there was nobody to take care of her. I mean, my grandfather was working, but, once the kids, they graduated, they had to take care of themselves. And I think sometimes we have been, and I'll speak for myself. I've probably enabled my kids for a few extra years that they didn't need to be enabled. But then they got it, then they're out and they're, great and taking care of themselves and all that stuff. But it is those little lessons that I think they watch us make, so your kids, Crystal, that you're working with all the time, they're watching you and the decisions you make, and you're showing them that decisions are important and that there are always consequences. We get to choose our consequences. That's kind of a good way of looking at it as well. So,
yeah, you get to choose your consequences. And Lisa, I know, your grandmom, your kids just have to, yeah. And especially if you've had adopted children, life is not easy. And sometimes you have no choices in life.
Yeah. Yeah, it's children they're such a blessing in our lives, but the lesson of being a mother is that I think you brought it out so well, Crystal, which is that be a good confidant, a friend, but also that protector and the boundary maker and the person who actually requires and lifts us up. I mean, that's what a mother does. It's not an easy position. It's a tough position. And frankly, being a good mom requires sacrifice of all kinds of things. Sometimes your kids are mad at you. In fact, I've told this story before, Delinda. By the time I got to my fourth child, and my fourth child hit 11 and said, "I hate you, Mom," I was like, we've been here so many times, My first child, I was like, crying all over the place. My fourth child, I was like, "Oh, we've been here, child. We're okay. You'll love me when you're 22."
Yeah, because we learn as we go along as mothers too, right? I mean,
Right.
It's like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
it's the biggest learning curve out there, I think. Yeah. And it was amazing how
Put
smart
another
my
I
mother
hate you
got
sticker
once
on
I
your
had.
shoulder, and you're just like,
Right, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. What else is new, child?
Oh my gosh. Well, ladies, we are at the top of the hour. As always, it goes so fast. I so appreciate Crystal, you being here. What a fun person you are. This is just awesome.
hey, Delinda, before we let her go, though, we need to get her website in so that, or have her put her information under so people can get a hold of her.
Yes.
Oh, okay. My website, actually, I am all over the place. I have actually a couple of podcasts, and that's probably the best places to find me is on social media. So I'm on Facebook. One of my podcasts is called The Business Zone with Crystal and Gilbert. And I broadcast that live every Friday afternoon at 3:00. And that you can find us on YouTube and Facebook. I also have a podcast that also is on YouTube called The Community Briefing, and that is broadcast live on Facebook and YouTube every Thursday at 11:00. And both of those are business podcasts. One's an informational. Community Briefing is an informational podcast that is there to let you know what's going on in the community. I launched it during the pandemic to let people know where the money was and what resources were there to help keep businesses solvent during the pandemic. The Business Zone is about business. How do we run businesses? How do we stay solvent? How do we grow our business? And then on Monday, I do a podcast called Conversations on the Patio. And we talk about all things retirement. What does it take? When do we need to start? And how do we prepare for retirement? So that's kind of where you find me. So Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube.
That's awesome.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa, for posting that. So yeah, Crystal, I missed our thing because I had a gig in Detroit and I missed our podcast together. So I'm going to reconnect with you.
Please do. We're always there. Yes, please. Whenever you're ready to come back whenever you're ready to come on, just let me know. We're always there. We're the Business Zone. We're actually celebrating our 7th year in July.
Ooh.
Yeah,
That's
so
great.
Excited about that. The Community Briefing, I'm getting ready to change that entity over to a social impact platform so that we can I'm looking for that to be a collaborative, bringing all of the community organizations in Los Angeles together. So that will be the feed-in source for all community news, and that we're broadcasting weekly so that all of our businesses can stay connected and all our organizations are collaboratively working together.
What a great idea. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is awesome space, Lisa. It's a pleasure to meet you, and I'm sure we will all come together. Yeah.
Yes, because I have a podcast as well, so I mean it'll be fun.
Yes, please do, and then I can have you guys on my show. Love to have you guys on our retirement show. I do that with a friend of mine, so we talk about things retirement and the things not to do in preparation for retirement, and the things not to do while you're in retirement.
Yeah, you probably should be doing what I'm doing for retirement.
What you doing for retirement?
We're buying a farm up in Utah, and we're creating a homestead.
Oh, well, actually, that's pretty cool.
Not quite a retirement, but
yeah, but homesteading.
I don't think we retire in the old sense of the word. There's a topic for you right there. I don't think retirement really is even a word anymore. It's just a life change.
Life change.
None of us are going to sit on the patio and rock in the rocking chair for the next 25 years. I mean, we just go into the next season of what God has for us, right?
I really call it the second and third act.
I agree.
There you go.
Totally not.
I like the homesteading, farming, and all that stuff. I love that. We have a garden in my backyard, my sister and I live for that.
Yep.
So you and Lisa have a lot in common.
From Vegas.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So, well, thank you, ladies. This was fun as always. Crystal, love you. Thanks so
Love
much
you.
for being here. All right, my friends, we are going to sign off. Remember that life is not a matter of chance. It is a matter of choice. We get to choose how we want to live our life. So go out and make it a fabulous week, and we will see you next Tuesday. Bye now.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Week.
Nice to meet you.